So, we're finally allowed to talk about it seems. Or rather, talk about him. I am, of course, talking about the latest chapter in the Niall Collins saga. The traditional media took their sweet time acknowledging the story, which was broken by none other than The Ditch on April 19th. It took until April 24th for a student newspaper of all things to be the first to break the media's silence over the issue. Trinity News stepping up and showing up the established news outlets here in Ireland by reporting on the saga. A hopeful sign that the future of journalism is in good hands here. So I've mentioned Niall Collins before on this channel when I discussed liars in Dáil, and up until now he hasn't been accused of anything criminal. Dodgy as fuck? Yes. A liar? Yes. But criminal? No. Our bar for criminality among politicians is so high, even Bertie couldn't reach it. If I was betting, I'd wager Niall Collins won't reach it either, but that in and of itself is just one of the major red flags of this story. So to quickly recap the first chapters of this saga, he lied on his planning application in order to circumvent the rules and make it appear like he had a need for the one-off house he was applying for. He lied about where he lived, he lied about his name, and he lied again when asking for an extension for said ill-gotten planning permission. Unlike Fine Gael's Damien English, he did not have to resign his junior ministry position. Questions were asked, but no answers were forthcoming. He gave a weak statement in the Dáil and made a show of himself dodging Claire Brock's questioning on The Tonight Show on Virgin Media TV, but somehow survived without resigning anything. In other words, he brazened it out and is still a sitting TD and junior minister. For now at least. But recent revelations in The Ditch must be making the coalition shout rather than mutter the fucking ditch. Niall Collins, back when he was a Limerick County Councillor, voted to allow a piece of land to be sold. Nothing untoward there, except for the glaring issue that his wife, a GP, had made inquiries the month prior about whether the council would be willing to sell that piece of land so that she could build a medical centre with offices and 2 apartments overhead. Hers was the only inquiry, despite what a council official stated during a meeting a month later. A motion was proposed to sell the land during that meeting a month later, and Niall Collins voted in favour of selling. He should have recused himself. His wife was very likely set to be a beneficiary of this vote, as whether he knew hers was the only inquiry into the land or not, he knew she was in the running to buy it, and therefore he was prohibited from voting and should have declared the conflict of interest. Failure to do so is, quote, an indictable criminal offence under Section 181 of the Local Government Act 2001. His wife, Emer O'Connor, is now, 15 years later, trying to sell that same piece of land, along with the 5 yet-to-be-built but planning-approved social houses, back to the council. Now, naysayers to this story will say that the vote was won 7-0, so his vote didn't matter. To that I say, every vote matters, and to think otherwise undermines democracy. He should not have voted, simple as that. If a politician cannot be trusted to follow the laws set out to curtail ethical violations, then they should not be trusted to be a politician. There is also the matter of him needing to not only recuse himself of the vote, but also declare his interest in the matter and not be party to any further discussions on the matter. Could his declaration have changed how the other councillors present would have voted? Perhaps that knowledge might have been off-putting to the others present, that a fellow councillor might benefit financially in the long run from this vote. We'll never know the answer to that question, but it is something to consider, and I would wager it is part of the reasoning behind the need to declare the interest in the first place. Otherwise, why is it in the Local Government Act at all? So lots and lots of red flags there. He knew his wife was interested in the site and voted to put that site on the open market with the knowledge hidden that hers was the only offer of interest. Now, he did release a statement to address the issue. He said that he wasn't party to the meeting to approve the sale to his wife in September 2008, as he was no longer a councillor at the time and was in fact a sitting TD. None of that was ever questioned, but fair enough. He went on to say that, quote, when the council executive recommended to the Bruff LEA committee that the property should be put up for sale in January 2007, neither I nor my wife had any pecuniary or beneficial interest in that property. There was no disagreement to the executive's recommendation, end quote. So he confirms what we already knew, that he was there and agreed with the others to sell the site. The big issue here is him saying neither he nor his wife had any pecuniary or beneficial interest in the property. This is a lie. His wife had written to the council only the month previous to ask the council if they would be willing to sell. At that point in time, hers was the only recorded interest in the site, and what appears to have prompted the discussion and vote to sell the land in the first place. To say they had no interest in the sale is a lie. So again, red flags. Even if it turns out not to be criminal, it is ethically and morally bankrupt. And such people have no place holding public office, in my opinion. Public representatives. That's what an elected official is. If you only represent yourself, then you are not a public representative and should not be in a position of power. End of story. And quite frankly, if it's not criminal, it should be. And that in and of itself is another massive red flag when it comes to how our governments, local and national, work. But this story is about much more than just Niall Collins. The established news media here in Ireland have a lot to answer for about their handling of this story. There was, in essence, a media blackout. Are we to believe that if these allegations had been levelled at a Sinn Féin, or indeed any other opposition party member, that the media would have been so silent? I'll let you decide for yourself how you feel about that one. But it took until Trinity News, a student newspaper, broke the deadlock, and until People Before Profit's Paul Murphy wrote to the Dáil Business Committee, quote, seeking time to be allocated in the Dáil to a statement by Niall Collins and a Q&A session with TDs about the allegations, before the established news media of the country spoke up. Well, news outlets had nothing to say during those few days other than one columnist for the Sunday Independent wondering why people on Twitter keep asking her for comment on the story, and the editor of the Irish Mail on Sunday agreeing with her bafflement and questioning the, quote, dark nature of the so-called, quote, movement by the people wishing to seek answers. I mean, God forbid the citizens of this country want accountability of our elected representatives and are sickened by the ever-present cloud of corruption that engulfs certain political parties. Now, there was a suggestion by Gavin Riley of Virgin Media News and News Talk that they remain silent due to fears of being accused of defamation if the article by The Ditch proved to be wrong. That's understandable in my view. However, surely a simple tweet of "we're aware of a story that has captured the public interest and are working to verify before commenting further" would have been allowed. If not, then that raises another serious red flag about our defamation laws potentially being used to silence journalists. Gavin Riley also revealed that not only did Niall Collins refuse to answer media requests for a statement, but that Limerick City and County Council were stonewalling their requests for the documents that the Ditch had obtained through the Freedom of Information Act. Yet another massive red flag right there. It took the Ditch themselves several attempts before the council finally relented and gave them the documents they asked for. Government at all levels should be the single most transparent thing in the country. Without transparency, there can be no accountability. No accountability enables the shenanigans we are seeing right now, and this is unacceptable. Red flags everywhere you look with this story. Another issue here is how long it took any politician from opposition benches to make a move. The story has the potential to bring down the government, and most, it seems, were asleep at the wheel. That raises some interesting questions. Skeletons everywhere, perhaps? Either way, a very frustrating few days watching as the story was ignored by all corners. It doesn't exactly engender trust in anyone, does it? And then we move on to the defence of Niall Collins by the coalition leaders, all three saying they don't believe Deputy Collins did anything illegal or wrong, yet all agree that he should have recused himself. So which is it? You can't have it both ways. Either he did nothing wrong, or he did something wrong. If nothing he did was against the rules, then why should he have recused himself? Absolute gaslighting nonsense, trying to have it both ways. And then we had the call for the Q&A session that was voted down by the coalition and their independent lackeys. A great vote for transparency and accountability right there. The people deserve answers, not just what will no doubt be a nothing statement again by Collins. There are far too many inconsistencies in this whole debacle, much like on the previous occasion, for a simple statement to be good enough. But if you listen to Leo Varadkar, the Dáil is not the place for accountability and answers because they are not a, quote, kangaroo court. Yet he seems perfectly okay with handing down his own verdict of not guilty on the matter. Again, he can't have it both ways. There is one very transparent thing in all of this though. None of the coalition parties want to throw him to the wolves as it might trigger an election. Fine Gael in the latest poll were at 15%, their lowest ever, so that surely explains on Taoiseach Leo Varadkar's readiness to support Collins. The Greens know that they are running on fumes, so again, happy to help. And sure, why would Fianna Fáil betray one of their own who is just following the party principles? And of course, I can't imagine they are looking forward to an election either, given their members are the heads of the 3 worst functioning government departments in health, housing and education. Add all that up and it's clear as day that the government have lost all credibility on this one. Not that they had much to begin with. Ultimately, these are not allegations that will simply go away if Niall Collins keeps his head down. This is a serious issue that needs to be fully investigated, and the public have every right to answers. He is an elected representative after all. He is paid for with taxpayer money. He owes the people of this country a real explanation. He does not deserve to keep his job after all is said and done, or his pension for that matter. It's funny how in the private enterprise, if you fail to uphold the ethics or code of conduct of your place of employment, you could well lose your job. But in politics, as long as it's not criminal, it's all good. Wait, did I say it's funny? Sorry, I meant disgusting. And it may end up being successfully argued that he did nothing criminal, much like Leo and the leak, but what he did was still morally and ethically bankrupt. I would liken what he did here to insider trading, if I'm honest. There were no certainties, but then again, 2 advertisements in the property section of a local newspaper doesn't exactly seem like they were shouting the potential sale from the rooftops for a real bidding war, now does it? So many issues with this story, and no doubt we will be frustrated by the outcome as we so often are. I'll say it again, at the next election we all need to remember these stories, remember the patronising, gaslighting, infuriating nonsense from all corners of the coalition and those who prop them up when needed, and we must bring the accountability at the polls. As of recording, Niall Collins has yet to make his statement to the Dáil, which is due sometime on Thursday 27th of April. I can't imagine it will be newsworthy, but if it is, and since this is an evolving story, I'm sure I'll revisit the saga if needs be. I'd wager it'll be more of the same from him though. If he has any shred of decency, he will resign fully as a TD, but, well, I won't hold my breath. His position was untenable when the inconsistencies around his planning application came to light, and this? Well, this is just salt in the wounds. He needs to go. There should be no room in politics for people like Niall Collins. Thanks for joining me today. If you enjoyed the content, you know what to do. Like, share, subscribe and hit that bell icon to be notified of new content. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter for real-time ramblings and reactions. Until next time, slán go fóill.